Can you give a simple real-world example of how developers use 2 to 3 multiple APIs to build something to explain how Postman works for a non-tech person?
I mean, a very common example that I would probably use is like a smartphone application. So if you're building a smartphone application, let's take Twitter as an example. So you load up Twitter. Your tweets are not sitting on your phone. They're sitting on a server cloud somewhere, and your phone makes an API call, and the API call essentially fetches some data from a server and renders it on your device. And let's say you go and favorite something, or you reply to something. All of these are individual API calls that your phone is executing. Now, for this thing to kind of come together, there is a debugging process that a developer typically goes through to see if it's working. If you are a technical architect who's designing this API call, then you would be building it and prototyping it inside Postman. So that's kind of like a typical example of how a simple application is making a bunch of API calls. But where Postman comes in is it helps you refine for a developer the producer lifecycle and the consumer lifecycle. So typically APIs go through this process of what is the design going to be? What are my API endpoints? How am I going to debug it once I've written some code? How am I going to write automated tests against it? How am I going to document it? So Postman has tools for all of these things. And as people go through the API lifecycle, more and more people come into this process. So it would begin with a developer specifying, okay, I'm going to build this endpoint, but then an architect might jump in and give you some feedback within Postman and tell you that, okay, this is something that you might want to consider. Once that code and that call is well spec'd out, it might go to a quality engineer and a security engineer who would like to test whether this API call actually works as intended or not. When it goes for consumption, Postman has powerful documentation capabilities to let technical writers come in and kind of enhance the documentation of the API. When an API goes to production, we have tools to help you monitor the API to see while your API is running, is this functional or not. So there are of course a lot more steps, and I'm kind of simplifying quite a bit, but Postman has tools for each step of this process for all of these personas and actors who are engaged in the building of the API. Now, parallel to that is the consumption of an API. When a developer interacts with an API for the first time, instead of writing code, now they can just open up Postman and make an API call and actually generate code out of it rather than the other way around. And that makes the consumption process very quickly. So they can essentially write code through Postman and integrate it into their application. So this back and forth process repeats for like all of these endpoints. And effectively, it's like this engineering process that Postman helps with.